Good morning, everyone. Howdy. Welcome to our graduation ceremonies for the 126th graduating class of Texas Military Institute. So much of today will look nothing like the previous 126 commencement ceremonies, but I believe that this next part of our ceremony will look just like the other 126. We need to honor our God and honor our country. So I would ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remaining standing, let us pray. Good and gracious God, we come before you grateful for a new day. In the midst of so much uncertainty, we are certain that you are a God of love. Bless this day, bless our seniors, bless our families, that they would know that they are loved and cherished by you beyond measure. Give you thanks today for Dr. Luis Murillo and Mary Warder, who will share with us their words. Lord, inspire them with courage and confidence and give us ears to hear. Bless all of our seniors as they travel here today, Lord, that in the midst of a ceremony that looks nothing like they had probably hoped it would look, that they would find moments of joy, moments of celebration, even moments where they can relish in a little bit of pride. Lord, thank you again for opportunities to serve. Thank you for an institution that's dedicated to raising servant leaders for a very, very long time, Lord. Bless us with the courage to continue that mission for decades and decades to come. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Please be seated. So as we have adapted to the challenges of hosting a graduation ceremony in a COVID-19 world, there are so many people that I need to thank who made today possible. And at the risk of leaving some people out, I do want to point out especially Pam Nelson and Nikki Griffin, Ann Schaefer-Salinas and Stacy Smith, Michael Call and Isaac Banks, and so many more who have been so flexible and adaptable to make today possible. So many parents and students have reached out to me as news came to you, parents and students, about the changes of today. And the overwhelming emotion that most families emailed to me, or the word they used, was that we are disappointed. Parents would say, I'm disappointed that graduation looks like this. And all I could say back to all of those families is that TMI is disappointed too. Our faculty and our Board of Governors and our community are disappointed that we can't all be here today to honor you, class of 2020, the way you deserve to be honored. This is not what we wanted today to look like either, but here we are. And at TMI, we have said for 127 years that we raise great human beings. And one of the characters of a great human being is the ability to be resilient, the ability to quickly recover from difficulties. So to the class of 2020, COVID-19 has been a major disruption to your senior year. For that, I am sorry. I'm sorry it didn't end the way you envisioned it. But this won't be the last time that something in your life doesn't end the way you envisioned it. So may the resilience, class of 2020, may the resilience that you have practiced these last few months prepare you for a lifetime of resilience. I'm proud to honor you today, class of 2020, even if it's in a very odd way. And I can't wait to watch you grow into great human beings who value wisdom and integrity and service and excellence and reverence and resilience. So I'm going to invite to the podium Dr. Luis Murillo, who will be our faculty speaker, followed by our battalion commander, Mary Warder, who will be our student speaker. I love the tradition at TMI where our two graduation speakers are chosen by the students and the faculty. The students choose the faculty, and the faculty choose the student. And so it's my honor to welcome to the podium Dr. Luis Murillo.
Thank you. For those of you who know me, give me a mic and a camera. It's going to be a long one, especially now that I know that I'm doing it before air conditioning. In June 1966, Senator Robert F. Kennedy spoke before university students in South Africa on the importance of establishing, quote, a road toward equality of freedom. That road was necessary to overcome, quote, self-imposed handicap of prejudice and discrimination based on nationality, on social class, or race. Discrimination repugnant to the U.S. Constitution, end quote. Kennedy, however, was hopeful about the future, but also cautious, noting, like it or not, we live in interesting times. They are times of danger and uncertainty. Indeed, the historical record reveals a maelstrom of events that led to uncertainty and danger, from landmark civil rights legislation to race riots to the assassinations, including Robert's brother, John F. Kennedy, in 1963, and Robert himself in 1968, a few months after Martin Luther King was assassinated. The world seemed to be spinning out of control, and catastrophe was imminent. Sound familiar? Kennedy's wise advice in this speech resonates greatly for our times, but I want to retell another story from 1966 that has generally escaped the attention of historians before delving into Kennedy's speech. In September 1966, 6 boys were rescued from a deserted island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The story of the boys, 13 to 16, started the year before. Bored and tired of the strict private school rules that they lived under, they set off for Fiji, 500 miles away, in a small fishing boat. Not having the legendary savant in Coach Gertz, the boys found themselves in a wicked storm that first night that all but destroyed the boat. They drifted 8 days before coming on an island, deserted, called Ata. Over 100 years before, people lived on that island, but a slave ship had came, took half the inhabitants, and the rest left. For the next 15 months, yes, that is right, they spent more than a school year surviving on that island. In fact, they thrived. These boys organized themselves in teams of 2 for safety, built a kitchen, created a garden, and even made a badminton field. One made a primitive guitar out of the steel wires found on the boat so they could sing songs and have music as they began and ended each day with prayers and song. If they quarreled, they had a timeout procedure in place. When one broke a leg, the other set the leg and pitched in to do extra work. The esteemed anthropologist Margaret Mead once argued that the first sign of civilization was not poverty, was not religion, but was finding a healed femur bone. Because in the animal kingdom, if you break a leg, you die. In a civilization, someone takes care of you, feeds you until you heal, as the boys did for their friend. These boys understood that a community's interest can be more important than individual wants and needs, especially in time of crisis. These wayward students lucked out when they eventually came to the top of the volcano and found a small valley filled with wild taro, bananas, and chickens that had continued to grow after the Tongans were taken 100 years before. When I first came across the story, I was incredulous. I thought that leaving on a small fishing boat and surviving 15 months seemed a bit of a stretch for my TMI students. Loading up in someone's Jeep, roughing it at an Airbnb with Wi-Fi on South Padre Island seemed more like a scenario that they would do. To be sure, I know TMI students often imagine running away from school because of such critically important things like the dress code, or not wanting to get a haircut because the bird's nest it housed would be destroyed. On more than one occasion, I listened to student outrage over cell phones and snacks banned in coats, both actions sanctioned in the 11th commandment, so they argued. All sorts of issues would drive students to complain. At least they seemed important at the outset of this school year, as we now live in interesting times. Of course, it is possible that TMI students would be inspired by Mrs. Bilbrey, perhaps giving an exuberant description of a large flamingo preserve on Fiji and wanting to get her something in the gift shop. Or that Coach Coney claimed, I know a guy on Fiji who makes the best pizza on the Fijian archipelago. Hand to God, he brings the water every day from New York to make his pizzas. It is conceivable TMI students would feel safe because Mr. Friedrich had detailed all the possible poisonous animals and insects. Or that Mr. Philippi lent his prized Frisbee disc, and that meant they could play with others on Fiji. To pass the time on their voyage, perhaps they would bring a collection of Mr. Archer's puns so bad they're funny. No one would be surprised that Miss Lim would secretly give them some cupcakes for the trip. But the more I thought about it, the more I became convinced that when push came to shove, TMI students could and would survive. But in order to reach that conclusion, I had to overcome what I was taught. I was taught that if you took 6 high school students, stranded them on an island, civilization would fall apart, especially without adult supervision. As with all high school students in my era, and even beyond, when I grew up, we read The Lord of the Flies, a novel in graphic detail that depicted the utter chaos that would ensue if you stranded a bunch of boys on an island. What we have here is the classic nurture versus nature debate. Are these interesting times because innate human nature pushes us in this direction, or are we pushed by a social environment we grow up in? To be sure, the situation is more complex than that, but there's a fine line between being selfless and being selfish. It takes work to be selfless. There's a growing corpus of scholarship that argues that when push comes to shove, when we become stranded on an island, our selfless selves come forth. What happens is that all sorts of things push us away from our naturally good selves as the busyness of life gets in the way, or we lose sight of our true selves and what is important, and we let individual wants outweigh community needs. As we have isolated ourselves these past few months, I thought about our collective future. On walks around my neighborhood, passing by neighbors I had not seen in years. The refrain, quote, "Can't wait till we get back to normal," would echo in my head during these privileged walks. Missing students, colleagues, and friends, I was sympathetic to that call. After all, normal had a comforting feel. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered, do we really want to go back to normal? By most accounts, our planet is a healthier place with pollution levels plummeting the last few months, so much so that we in San Antonio can actually see the stars at night. The people in Punjab, India, for the first time in years can see the Himalayan mountains. And city dwellers in Istanbul are now delighted to see dolphins play in the Bosphorus. Do we really want to go back to a life of so much chasing a meritocracy myth, just so we can work ridiculously long hours to produce so much production and so much waste? Or do we want to find a better balance? Do we want to go back to a normal where in our public education system, Los Angeles teachers struggle in their poor neighborhoods to supply schools? At the same time, the school district police force has grenade launchers, which they only gave up due to protests in 2014. Do we want to go back to a normal, as in the words of civil rights activist Brian Stevenson, quote, "We have a criminal justice system that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. A justice system that criminalizes mental health behaviors and that has led to a disproportionate number of blacks in prison." The more I thought about this, the more I realized that my comforting normal was not comforting for far too many. Like it or not, we're at another crossroads, as the world was when Robert Kennedy spoke in 1966. Like it or not, it is the younger generation of this world that can construct a new order, a new normal that is sustainable for all. Let's be clear here. For those of you who follow the news, there has been a tendency to say the unrest today is just like 1966. While problems persist, this is simply not the case. Much has changed. In 1966, whites were prohibited from marrying blacks in Texas, and now interracial marriage is increasingly the norm. And while it took far too long, so is gay marriage. In 1966, if I went to school on the west side of San Antonio and spoke Spanish in the hallway, I would be subject to corporal punishment, as bilingual education did not become decriminalized until 1969. In 1966, blacks were prohibited from playing varsity football at the University of Texas, as in most universities in the South. Now black athletes are helping lead for changes on their campuses. In 1966, Ruby Bridges was already a veteran of the civil rights movement at the ripe age of 12. She was one of the first to desegregate an elementary school in the South. She went to school escorted by 4 U.S. Marshals, and all white parents withdrew their children from the school, and all teachers, with the exception of one, refused to teach her. She would later note, however, quote, "Each and every one of us is born with a clean heart. Our babies know nothing about hate or racism, but soon they begin to learn, and only from us. We keep racism alive. We pass it on to our children. We owe it to our children to help them keep their clean start." We've done much better on that front, but still have a far too long way to go. Speaking about the turmoil today, Bates expressed protest, made her hopeful, quote, thinking, "I think the baton has passed. I think when we open our doors and we're able to go back out, this world is going to be a different place." This different place rests primarily with you, class of 2020, and those of your generation. Back in 1966, Robert Kennedy noted words of caution that still resonate today. He said that, quote, "Nothing is more perilous than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Yet this is the measure of the task of your generation, and the road is strewn with many dangers," end quote. For Kennedy, the first danger was futility, that problems appear too daunting. To use a poor analogy, as you know is my wont, things appear daunting if you wait until the last minute to complete a semester-long project, but becomes more manageable if you work on the task on a daily basis or with small goals that lead to larger results. Kennedy considered 3 other obstacles. The second obstacle was the one Martin Luther King faced, when moderate ministers asked him to wait, to be patient, as more immediate necessities should be met. Recalling the inspiration of his brother, John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy argued, quote, "There is no basic inconsistency between ideals and realistic possibilities," end quote. And the third danger isn't being timid. Quote, "Far too few are willing to brave the disapproval of their fellows, the wrath of their society. Moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence. Yet it is the one essential, vital quality of those who seek to change the world which leads most painfully to change." Kennedy would continue, "For the fortunate among us, the fourth danger is comfort, the temptation to follow the easy, familiar path of personal ambition and financial success so grandly spread before those of us who have a privilege of an education. Historically, I would argue it is this fourth danger that has appeared to get us off, quote, the road to freedom of equality more than others. I do not advocate that you set aside your ambitions. Rather, you simply recognize that we are at a crossroads, once again, with the opportunity to reconstruct the world, to deal with these interesting and dangerous times. I've been to a few graduations, and Admiral Crowe was one of the speakers at one of mine. He's a former chairman of Chief Justice of the Staff for Republican Presidents Reagan and Bush, and was a U.S. ambassador to England under Democratic President Clinton. And he noted that challenging times come and go, and that, quote, "The bottom line is you should direct your talents and energies to improving our condition without being burdened with the worries of imminent collapse or catastrophe. With time, you will discover that such an attitude not only better accords with facts, but also assists you in leading others toward constructive involvement in solving our problems. I would only add that as you direct your talents and energies, please keep in mind that you are naturally good." Let me leave you with some advice focused on your more individual lives. Not necessarily a top 10, but more or less a top 10. Number 10, Distinguished Professor of Film at UT, Matthew McConaughey, all right, recently noted that the best advice he got in high school was when a friend told him to simply say thank you when you are complimented. There's no need for false humility here. Really, I look so bad today. Or that awkward counter compliment. Oh, I think you're smart too. Just accept the compliment and say thank you. This would be an appropriate time for a couple of thanks. On behalf of the faculty, I would like to thank all of you who trusted us to mentor and teach these 2020 TMI Episcopal graduates. To the students, I'd like to thank you for intentionally and unintentionally challenging us faculty and staff with your spirited presence these past few years. Number 9, do some old school writing. There's a bit of magic of putting the pen to paper and simply writing. You should know of what I speak, as Mama Sherry Brown started a tradition a few years back of faculty writing to seniors. I know you appreciated getting those letters. Do the same. Number 8, speaking of old school ways, take an electronic fast on a regular basis. Disconnect from the web and reconnect with your soul and with your friends and family. Number 7, pick a sauce, a spice, something that can make an ordinary meal special. For me, it's pesto. I try to make sure I have some good pesto in the fridge so that any meal becomes that more delectable. There are multiple ways of doing this: curry, cumin, hot sauce, even a specialty mustard for those who are lazy. But pick one and have it in your mini fridge, in college and beyond. Number 6, take some time to congratulate yourself. Revel in the good person you are becoming. There's a tendency always to look ahead till you get to a certain age, and then you look back. Take this accomplishment of your high school diploma. You may overlook this accomplishment as you look to the challenges of college life. You may even consider it just a stepping stone. It is much more. You have, as a group, won district and state championships in a variety of sports, produced, acted, and created entertaining and thought-provoking art, played a critical role in revitalizing the TMI Corps, and contributed in many ways to service for this school and community. Think about the changes you've overgone at TMI, of what you were like as first-year high school students at TMI, clogging up the hallways and being generally annoying, to seniors providing clothes to veterans and help curb bullying. You've come a long way, and you're now ready for the next step. Some of you may feel that you're not ready or lack potential. My experience of teaching for the last 30 years knows otherwise. The other day, a less than stellar student from the TMI class of 2014 sent me the following note. Hey, Doc, just wanted to reach out and say thanks for helping me realize I was an idiot in high school. I'm currently waiting on my grad school acceptance, and I'm going for my PhD. Just wanted to say thank you again. You're an amazing teacher and person. That means all of you graduates of 2020 class have potential for greatness. And yes, these are the sorts of notes we teachers get, and it sustains us for years. After reflecting on your own and your classmates' considerable accomplishments, get over yourselves and move on. Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. ¿Quién eres? The literal translation is, tell me who you are and who you walk with, and I will tell you who you are. The essence of this saying, however, rests in understanding that your present and future relies greatly on how you choose and maintain your friends. You should continually develop your own character and learn how to be a good friend who supports the aspirations of those around you and who keeps others out of harm's way. Believe it or not, I still count as my closest friends those I met in high school, and these are friendships that have lasted over 45 years. Please remember that you've made friends with members of the senior class and that these members come from all over the world and speak multiple languages. While we are not perfect, please remember that you walked with a dedicated, passionate, and highly competent faculty and staff that will continue to support you in the years to come, and who knows, even become friends. Number 4, one thing that has become clear in the past few months is that you, TMI class of 2020, spend an inordinate amount of time in bed or near your bed. Given how much time you spend sleeping around and lounging around, invest in some good pajamas with breathable cotton that is comfortable and that you look good in case someone comes to visit before 3 p.m. Number 3, Pursue a hobby or interest that is outside your work life. It can be anything from scuba diving to collecting stamps. Hobbies keep the brain alive and push you to extend beyond the people you work with and live nearby. Number 2, give. Make charity a part of your life. Do you need a Starbucks coffee every day, or that extra piece of clothing, or that latest gadget? Just a little bit of sacrifice and you'll have $50 to $100 to give every month. And number 1, as you well know, stay out of jail. Speaking of jail, in a fictionalized world, in 1966, Annie Dufresne crawled through 500 yards of sewage to escape the corrupt Shawshank prison, as depicted in one of Father Scott's favorite movies, The Shawshank Redemption. Dufresne did so because it was, quote, time to get busy living. So TMI class of 2020, congrats, and let's get busy living. Thank you. Thank you. So, as Father Scott said, the faculty also select a student speaker. And for those of you who know me, I'm a kind of a cynical New Yorker, and you may be wondering why I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because the students like Mary Warder, who will be leaders, who have shown leadership, and will be leaders. She's on her way to West Point, but like with other TMI graduates of 2020, they're on their way to construct a new world order. So without further ado, Mary, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and greetings, faculty and staff, parents, grandparents, families, and friends. And especially hello and congratulations to the class of 2020. 2020 is not the first time that TMI graduates had to face less than ideal circumstances. Mr. Joseph A. Cohn, Jr. graduated from TMI in 1946. And throughout his time at TMI, the training in the Corps resembled training in the military as closely as possible, preparing TMI students to join the war effort. World War II ended during the fall semester of his senior year. Mr. Cohn was Bravo Company commander and had a rather successful senior year. I had the honor of talking to Mr. Cohn during an hour-long phone conversation, and he can recall his senior year prom, in which he got to wear his white formal Corps uniform. With the war being over, it seemed as though the remainder of his senior year would run smoothly, until the polio epidemic picked up speed. Mr. Cohn, after 4 years of being a dedicated boarding student at TMI, then at the Old Main campus, had no graduation ceremony. When talking to Mr. Cohn, you would never guess his entire high school experience took place during historical, world-changing events. He recalls his time at TMI so fondly, laughing about when Dan Blocker, his platoon sergeant, who would later go on to star in the TV show Bonanza, lifted 2 talkative kids by the collar during formation, or lifted up a small car by himself. Mr. Cohn can describe to you in perfect detail when he was awarded a trophy by General Wainwright during field day of his senior year. Mr. Cohn manages to remember his best memories from TMI, even with the chaos that was surrounding the school during his high school years. He graduated from UT Austin as a distinguished military graduate, earned his law degree from UT Austin Law School, served as judge of Nueces County Court of Law, is now an extremely successful lawyer practicing law for 65 years, and celebrated his 91st birthday in May. Despite everything he was faced with as a student at TMI, Mr. Joseph A. Cohn figured it out. I was running over ideas in my head for what this speech should be about. What message represents our class the best? The characteristic of our class that continued to stand out to me is that our greatest talent is our ability to figure it out. This class is full of the most wise, goofy, intelligent, talented, and compassionate people I know. and all of those qualities lend to us being weirdly good at figuring things out. We have jumped through hoops and tackled everything that comes at us more than any class I've seen. I am constantly impressed with the things our class comes up with when faced with less than ideal situations. We've mastered the art of coming up with some of the strangest class gift ideas. And by the way, I'm still crossing my fingers for a live pet panther. And fully embracing cringy karaoke in the gym during advisory. We've come together as a class and figured out how to support each other in more ways than one. We figured out how to be one of the most resilient classes this school has likely ever seen since Mr. Cohn's class of 1946. We figured out how to pour love and effort into our senior year at all times. We figured out how to become the leaders that this school needed, and we did it without realizing it, through doing the little things. We figured it out by sobbing during each other's chapel talks, building Chevy Silverados for Founders Day, grilling food in the amphitheater, even though it may have presented just a few fire hazards, earning the title of state champions multiple times, putting on amazing play productions, debating with Mr. Ridewood like our lives depended on it, annoying Dr. Murillo to no end, visiting DP enough to make her think we just wanted to get out of practice, sweating way too much during Coach Tony's workouts, shaking the bleachers from jumping so much at football games, talking to Father Scott like he's one of our pals, and causing nearly every teacher in chapel an eye roll when we gave our numerous and very obnoxious chapel announcements. As we all leave this place and start new phases of our lives, far away from each other and all we've known, there's going to be a lot in our lives that requires us to figure it out. Some of us are going to have to figure out where to sit in the dining halls, and others might just try to figure out how to cook in their dorm rooms without starting a fire. Some are going to have to figure out how to do their own laundry for the first time, and we all will have to figure out how to find new, quality friends among our dorm halls, and how to navigate through a maze of professors' offices, classrooms, and labs. But don't worry, find calm and reassurance in the fact that every faculty member on TMI's campus has instilled in us the proper skill set to move forward in life and figure it out. Yes, Mrs. Griffin may have given you quite a few stern talking tos about your accumulating tardies, and Major Claiborne may have yelled at you about getting a haircut, and Mrs. Bilberry may have drilled rhetoric into your head so often that you can recite the rhetorical triangle in your sleep, and Coach Davis may have asked you several questions that made you rethink everything you thought you knew about life and existence. But each of these instances have shaped us into the people we are now, people who I know can tackle anything this life throws at them. Teachers and staff, thank you for helping us figure it out. And more than anyone, our parents have helped us figure it out. Not only have they been helping us figure it out from the day we were born, but they have supported all of us in our journey at TMI, and we owe everything to them for allowing us to move through life as amazingly, and sometimes as recklessly, as we all did. Parents, thank you for helping us figure it out. So, class of 2020, let me remind you that as we leave this place and walk on different paths, our resilience will remain the most important part of our bond. We have been through a lot, and yet we have always tackled it together. Remind yourselves of Mr. Cohn, who was able to become successful and hold on to his best memories from TMI, despite his senior year taking place during unforeseen and troubling times. You have the skills, the experience, and the support to move you through life. All of us have full hearts, brilliant minds, and unmatched strength. Our time at TMI has prepared us to take this world by storm, and there is no doubt in my mind that this class is going to do groundbreaking things. Class of 2020, keep figuring it out. Thank you.
Stay right there. You can stand right there for just a second. So I'll Go further away from me so I can take my mask off. No, you're good right now. I'll hand it to you in a minute. So have a seat real quick. It's been a long-standing TMI tradition to award the last diploma to our highest-ranking cadet officer. Of course, that's Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Mary Margaret Warder, who served duly and ably during the 2019-2020 school year as our battalion commander. However, given that this graduation ceremony looks nothing like previous ceremonies, we thought we'd flip the script and give you our first diploma. So first, Mary Margaret Warder. I'll get you to take your, actually you'll be fine, I'll stay over here. It is my distinct pleasure to confirm that you have completed the graduation requirements for a TMI Episcopal diploma as set forth by the school and our Board of Governors, and you are the first graduate of the Texas Military Institute class of 2020, and we are so very proud of you. Congratulations. You got to hold that right there. Mr. Roop's going to come get a photo of you. We'll give you your real diploma up there when you leave. And then stay right there, Mary. So, Mary, there are a few awards that are typically given out at either the final pass and review or at graduation, and it's my pleasure to give them to you now. Two of them. First, Mary, you are the recipient of the Ralph Haynes Award, named for four-star General Ralph Haynes, TMI class of 1930, and given to the top cadet of the school year. You are our General Ralph Haynes Award winner. Congratulations. You keep that. That's all yours. And then stay right here. Got one more thing to tell you about. Finally, Mary, the TMI tradition is to present the Founders Award at graduation. This award is presented to the student who, in the opinion of the faculty, best embodies the mission of TMI, a student who is dedicated to excellence, who cares deeply for others, and is motivated to be a servant leader. The recipient receives a TMI captain's chair with their name on it. Why am I emotional? Quit crying. Hold on, let me finish. There's no senior more deserving of this honor than you, Mary Margaret Warder. Congratulations on your success at TMI, and best wishes for your future at West Point and beyond. You'll have to put that in your carry-on luggage as you go back to Ohio.
Oh, I don't live here.
You don't live here, but that chair goes with you. No, we will ship it to you. That concludes this portion of our ceremony. We have 9 o'clock start for some of your classmates. Mary, we're honored to be able to start with you. Congratulations, Doc. Congratulations, well done. Thank you all, and thank you for being here to support.